Economic pundits are still in a state of disarray, wondering if the grand multi-billion-euro rescue package to salvage the banks unveiled by Germany's Grand Coalition under Chancellor Merkel will actually take hold. Stockbrokers and executives in Germany's financial hub in Frankfurt aren't taking too much comfort from the continuing erratic ups and downs, mostly downs, on the German and international share markets. And though experts have praised the government's rescue plan, there has been some loud grumbling over cuts in executive salaries and bonus payments. One of our reporters went south to a wealthy city.
The bank towers in Frankfurt stand for power, strength and wealth, even during the crisis. But their rock-solid appearance is deceiving. Some urgent repairs are needed. The government as the savior for banks facing financial disaster, something many here in the nation's finance capital would rather not think about.
If you look at the body language of the bankers here in the city or at events, then you see a change. Observers may be able to spot a certain amount of uncertainty. Investment banks have lost their shine. Lots of investment bankers, and that's who we are really talking about. But high street bankers as well are worried about their jobs.
Domenico Gaetano is a banker whose confidence remains unshaken. He believes the banks could have weathered the crisis alone and that government aid is unnecessary.
The fundamental problem is that the political elite want to show the finance sector's elite who is better and vice versa. The rescue package is well meant, but will lead nowhere.
Domenico Gaetano is convinced that the markets can recover on their own. He says political intervention has only created the impression that the state can always fix things. And now policymakers want more influence over the banks which accept the government's assistance.
In the fight to get the best people, you can't put limits on pay. Maybe if a person gets 11 million euros, then it's too much, but a ceiling of 500,000 euros won't make things better. It won't make management any better.
At the moment, it's business as usual at the Frankfurt Stock Exchange, partly thanks to the government's rescue package. Broker Dirk Müller says the German government managed the crisis well, but the intervention was overdue. Some details of the package have, however, caused unease on the markets. For example, the fact that a maximum of 10 billion euros have been set aside for each bank that faces difficulties.
We were expecting more from the state intervention we've seen in the last few days. Last week they were talking of this huge parachute which would save everything and everybody. And then last weekend we had disappointing news. 10 billion euros per bank, 5 billion to buy up toxic assets, and pay ceilings of 500,000. That sounds a lot different to what was talked about last week, and it was very disappointing.
Nevertheless, Müller says he can detect a change in mood among brokers and bankers in Frankfurt. He says there's a swing back to basics.
On Wall Street, there's a saying, we're all just one trade away from humility. I think people are starting to realize things were really out of control. They say they should have seen it coming, and that everyone's partly responsible for the fact things have gone haywire. We have to try and concentrate on normal business, on the private sector, on industry, and not on the flow of money itself. I think people are starting to change their way of thinking, and I hope politicians will apply the necessary pressure.
Domenico Gaetano would rather not see more pressure from politicians, who he says aren't suitable as lecturers on the way the economy works.
What I see is the larger parties trying to win over voters. They say only the large parties and the state can straighten things out. The danger I see here is that this faith in the state, which is pretty strong as it is here in Germany, will be strengthened. People will say showing initiative and taking risks are cushioned by society.
Politicians and bankers, the state and the finance sector. The global financial crisis has put them in the same boat, but the two sides aren't at ease with each other. The government aid offered to German banks is finding few takers.